Material Forum, where thought leaders come together to get real on what's blocking us from building sustainably and the solutions to get us on the right track. I'm Kate Bachner. Thanks for joining us.
Hello and welcome to Material Forum. I'm thrilled to be joined today by someone who's redefining how we think about sustainable building, Edie Dillman, CEO and co-founder of B Public Prefab. B Public Prefab is a public benefit corporation delivering high-performance panelized building systems that help architects, builders, and developers create all-electric carbon-smart buildings 30% faster. Today, we'll explore how B Public Prefab is scaling sustainable housing, why prefab matters, and what resiliency actually looks like. Edie, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my total pleasure. Thank you for having me. I look forward to this conversation.
Absolutely. So where are you right now?
I am sitting in our design studio and showroom in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I'm actually sitting inside an example pod in our showroom, which also doubles as an exceptionally good sound studio. We are super insulated, so a good foot of dense packed cellulose makes for a very nice, quiet place to have a Zoom.
Wonderful. And what's the temperature like outside?
It's about 80. Santa Fe is, high desert, so it's pretty temperate. People, I think, have a misconception that New Mexico's like Arizona, like we're at 110, but it's pretty darn comfortable and arid up here on the mountain. So it's a great place to be. Obviously, most people think of it as vacation, but there are lots of us who live here and do a lot of green building.
Okay, well, good to know. So I just want to dive right in, and I know we have kind of some limited time. So I know that B Public Prefab relates to Passive House. It allows build teams to build to Passive House standards. And for those of us who are just either don't know about Passive House or have heard of it but don't really know the specifics, could you give an overview of it? And then how do your panels fit into that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And Passive House, it's a certification both through the Passive House Institute and from FIAS. And really the principles of Passive House are becoming more and more adopted in code. As our code improves for energy savings, we're getting closer and closer to Passive House. So really the principles are a perfect envelope. So it's very well insulated, and we're trying to stop any bridging of, hot weather. We're sitting in July, hot weather entering the building envelope. And so reducing dramatically what it requires to cool a home. Part of that is an air tightness, and code is moving towards, having blower door tests and HERS raters, qualifying homes for air tightness. The Passive House is the most rigorous. And what's really exciting about what we do for that air tightness is we're assuring that you've got the air tightness layer built into the structure of the building so that you can hit those metrics much more easily. You can kind of think about Passive House as putting a sweater on a house, but that always makes people think, oh, you're just talking about cold climates and heating. Sure. Some people really like the analogy to like your Yeti cooler. If you put ice in it and you keep it closed, so airtight, and it's super well insulated, it stays cold passively without having to add additional ice or coolant, right? And so that's really the principle is if you build a better envelope and you work with really well detailed window and door installs and you have kind of this perfect shell of insulation and airtightness and structure, then your requirements for heating and cooling can drop 80 to 90%. So getting as close to that net zero on site just from better building and better building materials. And then, of course, you can totally net it out with a little bit of solar and whatever you want on site generation. But it's really a conservation first approach. And then Passive House, or that approach, has all these wonderful benefits. It's healthier, you have less dust, you put in a ventilation system. So most of the homes we're putting in have an ERV, so it's a filtered, fresh air system that's very low energy. So there's these wonderful compounding benefits to building better and going for sort of the highest and best in construction. So that's a little bit of passive house. And of course, we're looking at shading in areas where you have a lot of solar gain. So you don't want to overheat a home. But really, passive house is not like passive solar where you're solely dependent on your orientation. Passive house is really about that perfect envelope. And that's what B Public launched in 2019 with a set of assemblies of panelized construction components so that you could kind of Lego together that perfect envelope and get any project to a low energy, high quality, super comfortable, and as we talked about in my sound studio here, super quiet environment.
Yeah.
So it's agnostic to materials or, architectural style. It's really about let's conserve, let's design out those failures in building science and get to something that is healthy and long-term resiliency. We're talking about hundreds of years rather than 30-year mortgage.
The origin story.
I imagine, these building envelopes to be this energy efficient, it does require some building science knowledge to do if you're going to do a stick frame build. And that's one of the reasons why I really like B Public Prefab is because, like, in a sense, you democratize, right? Passive house design, energy efficiency building. And I was just wondering if you could just speak to your origin story a bit.
Yeah, I appreciate you using that word, democratizing, because we really sort of up until we and other people came into the U.S. market for, regular builders, regular developers, homeowners, even we work a lot directly with homeowners. It wasn't possible to just spec the materials to get to that level of performance. It required a custom wall buildup and doing the modeling of the building science and the performance for that specific climate for those materials. And so it became a very bespoke and specialized green building approach. So it limited who could access that and even limited the professionals who were trained and able to achieve that kind of depth of design. And so this company rolled out technology from 15 years of practice. My partner, Jonah Stanford, who is an architect and a passive house consultant and was a part of the very first cohort of U.S. consultants trained, had a private architecture practice where he was implementing passive house in everything he was designing. A lot of people talk about passive house, like when you've learned about it, like the light bulb goes off or you've drank that Kool-Aid, it's really hard to go backwards because you realize your work can have so much more quality and impact for those homeowners or those residents. And so Jonah had definitely drank the Kool-Aid and had been practicing for 15 years and came up upon a problem of lots of really beautiful designs ready to be built for clients who are committed to passive house or just a better green building product and sustainability, but very few builders across the country who had been trained to achieve it, to really think about that airtightness in a very complicated, custom framed on-site project, and really had projects in, beautiful mountain rural communities and very few builders, number one, and zero builders who had been trained to achieve this sort of level of detailing required for high performance. And so the obvious answer to him was, well, I'm going to seek out ways to prefab those critical elements for any builder to achieve this. And he shared that business plan and that technology with me, and with one of our dearest and oldest friends who jumped right in. I mean, literally the light bulb went off for she and I, and it was like, there's so much impact we can have, and we can really offer this widely as a building material, as a full assembly, rather than having to kind of go down this rabbit hole of detailing through design and detailing through construction. So a lot of people really focus on, we've productized into this beautiful panel system, high performance envelopes, but we've also democratized the detailing. The architects that we work with, we offer freely consulting and detailing, even like the foundation details for high performance and the connection details for panelization, because we don't want people wasting time. We really want people to move forward with creativity and with joy of design and building without having to get stuck in that, just constant digging through the details. We want to open source and share as much as our work as we can. We've invested a lot up front so that it makes it a lot smoother, easier for people to work in this arena. So there are a lot of sort of fun aspects of sharing what we do because it comes from this depth of knowledge and work from Jonah's exploration in Passive House, but also through this constant R&D and iteration of let's do better. Like we keep on making improvements to what we do to serve the market. We take in information from other people. And I think that's because I have a creative background. Charlotte was a filmmaker. Jonah's an architect. And we're sort of design thinking people of you continue to iterate, you continue to share that knowledge and filter in, what the market is asking for. And because we're, flexible and excitable, we're able to pivot and change our offerings to serve what architects and builders are asking for. So sort of the inspiration and the start of this company is very much alive in what we do every day, which is, okay, what's that problem? Oh, there's a new area where there aren't experienced builders. They haven't done Passive House before. And now where we're at is there aren't experienced builders there to do prefab and high performance. So we've developed this whole building program where we're training builders on both building science and Passive House, panelization, but then how do you lift safely and rig that and do the crane work on site? So we just continue to sort of evolve creatively to meet the market and democratize what we're doing.
High performance meets traditional materials.
The thing is about B Public, this is an all wood assembly. So yeah, we're getting to this radical, wonderful, low energy, high comfort, but it's also with materials that are completely familiar to every builder. And part of it is, it's not just what's familiar now, but we believe in 50 years, people will still understand wood construction and be able to do repairs or additions or work with these materials. So thinking, it is a big change. It's like radical improvement, but it's also honoring the trades and the materials that we've been building with for 300 years. It's just building to the highest and best of those materials. The industry at large, and certainly in sort of the offsite or industrialized construction world where we sit, there have been big leaps forward, like big pushes into modular or different materials. And I think that transition is very hard, especially for smaller residential builders, to jump into something where, first of all, they get displaced off the job site, right? What they do is not giving them this great sense of pride or understanding of the materials. And really, this is a building material designed for builders. It's based on the tools they use, their goals, and things that are familiar. And so I think for us that transition this is just a piece of the build. Like there's only the sheathing and the framing and the insulation and the weather wrap and the air barrier. Mm-hmm. Really, everything else is traditional. And so we're not displacing the builders from it. We're just giving them like superpowers.
Sure.
To charge forward without saying what you've done is wrong. It really is like, we see you. We want to help you. How can we make it better for you? How can we reduce your risk? How can we increase joy? And then, of course, the outcome of clients are going to love those finishes. They're going to appreciate the speed. Mm-hmm. And that all goes to the builder. And I think that's what we want, is to elevate what they're doing. So it's a big transition, but it is one builder at a time, one project at a time. And we're okay with that. Like, we're okay with an organic growth and a transition because it seeds itself. One project, one crew, it has ripple effects that go beyond us speaking to people, but they're sharing that knowledge. And that's amazing to see how far those ripples go.
Removing the barrier to entry.
By providing or building rather with familiar materials, it's making it less scary, right? And it's less intimidating and it's more inclusive.
Absolutely. And I think, people say, how do you, quote unquote, sell to builders? And the very best thing that can happen is they come to our showroom and get into this pod that I'm talking to you from. Even better, observing a project going up and then being able to walk through a building envelope that went up, and we've had projects go up in 4.5 hours, but the average single family home goes up in 3 or 4 days, and then have a builder walk through and sort of kick the tires, as it were. And that's when they get it, because they realize there's all this new technology or a new product, and then you feel it and you work with it and you're like, yeah, it's kind of it's chintzy, it's kind of cheap feeling, it's not, this doesn't feel good to me. And for builders, this is, truly, we talk about good bones. We walk into homes that look a little sad, the paint's peeling, but you walk in and you feel, oh, it's got good bones. Like, I could remodel this house for the next 100 years, right? Like, it's going to last. And that's what, for us, when builders realize that these are the best bones they can work with, then they get it. Then they realize, like, oh, you're not diminishing my work. You really are elevating it. Hilariously, we did an open house really as a storm was rolling in January on the top of a mountain. And we had builders come out, and it was 20 degrees and it was getting really cold. And it was just the envelope and plastic on the windows. And the builders were walking through going, my crews are going to show up here. It is really comfortable inside, even without heat on. Like, this is a benefit. So you think about keeping people cool in summer, warm in winter. That's true of our crews as well. As this envelope is up very quickly, but then they're also comfortable. This is a really nice space for them to work. And it's very clear for the trades that follow the install that, there is this perfect air barrier. So the electricians really go, okay, this is cool. This is different. Tell me a little bit. Okay, I'll do that. Thank you. I'll use that, service cavity. And same for the plumbers. People become more respectful when they see it's super tight. It's really clean, as opposed to walking into open framing and there's sort of chaos on the site and you're not quite sure, where the finish wall is going to be. This gets real clear very quickly. And so builders seeing that, experiencing it, it wins them over. Not on a sales pitch, but yeah, I want to touch and feel this every day. I want to work with this for the next 6 months.
Yeah, and people think clearer in a more peaceful environment.
Speed.
Let's talk about speed, because you've touched on that. There's speed because it's made in the factory, right? And it's speed because it's easier to be installed on site. Could we just go into first the factory and then on site, and how that all kind of domino effects into a 30% faster build?
Thank you. It's a great question. And I can't guarantee speed, right? I mean, if somebody doesn't show up but once a week for the length of your build, it's still going to take a very long time. But we're condensing. So I love, people often ask, what about the timelines and when do you deliver? And we really pride ourselves on being responsive and getting to site very quickly according to the project. But basically, while you're doing the site work, while you're running the utilities, while you're doing the foundation, the panels are being produced at the same time. So we're condensing the construction. And of course, it's super efficient in our shop. I hate saying factory, in our shop to build the panels. It is designed to do exactly that with precision. Even doing the insulation, we're packing to a dense pack. So it's 3.5 pounds per cubic foot. And we're doing it flat on a table. So we have tremendous control as opposed to doing it up on scaffolding or a ladder and trying to get into the corners. We guarantee that density. And so we apply that sort of industrialized or lean manufacturing principles, but it is still a craftsman build in a controlled environment. All of our materials are stored inside, so we're keeping things nice and dry and nothing is, damaged, and then delivering to site. So the delivery of the panels, and we do have insulated floor cassettes. We have 3 different depths of walls that you can select from. We have 3 different depths of fully insulated roof panels you can assemble with, and they really are Legos for grown-ups, right? It's just you're playing with a crane. And so what we think of as that site framing and sheathing, and everything that we do is nailed for shear, and then it's weather wrapped completely with a fully adhered weather barrier. We've got an interior vapor control and air control layer. So all of those come together very quickly. Like I said, on an average single family home, it's 3 to 4 days to get the entire building envelope up and weathered in. And so in terms of speed and sequencing, that can be shaving off, 2-3 months from a project. And then you really are ready for roofing material on, say, day 8. You're ready for those windows and doors to be installed right away. And so a lot of what we're supporting in this transition is that your sequencing changes. Like, you no longer need to wait 5 months and then call for your roofing material, right? We really want to condense that sequencing and get everybody sort of out of that rote status quo pattern of building. We see there's such a shortage of builders, and we're working in a lot of high demand areas, like in the LA fire rebuild and in the Marshall fire rebuild, and across the country, really. So when we have a shortage of builders, it's really important to us that the builders who are out in the field doing great work, we're increasing their capacity to complete more homes and meet that housing demand, at the same time raising that quality. So that speed is important to ensure the structure fully insulated, following code, getting through all those inspections very quickly, and then moving on to the next.
And resiliency.
So you touched upon the Marshall fire, the LA fires. I first learned about B Public Prefab trying to research how to build a fire-resistant home. Could you talk about how Passive House and by extension your panels are really great for resiliency?
Yeah, and I have to express, we've been so fortunate to work with so many homeowners that have gone through horrible loss. And so this is usually the first question. Once someone's lost a home or concerned about fire risk, we go right into airtightness. And there was a great article, and maybe we can add it to your show notes that just came out around Passive House. But basically, the airtightness is critical, so that fire is not attracted. We all know that, fire requires oxygen. It's going to suck in all the oxygen. And if it does not have access to the inside air as a source of oxygen, it's not coming through the windows and doors or the wall assembly, that we're simply not attracting the fire to the building envelope or the structure. The other thing is the simplicity of form that is sort of dictated by a high performance home. We don't have open eaves. We don't have lots of vents coming out of the building. It really is minimalized of what is the openings into the home, and so I think really thinking about the simplicity of the form, and that those vents would be, self-closing and not attracting ash or embers, which is how most homes, it's kind of going up into the attics or into the venting space and then starting the fire from the inside and burning out. So again, looking at that, and that's sort of natural to passive house. And then I think number one, the answer to that question is, being fire smart in landscaping and really looking at the property and having defendable space around the home. But then what is the exterior material? And what is sort of the finish? Our friend Andrew Mitchler always says, think about fire hardening like there's a log and then there's kindling. The kindling will always start fire. What we really want is a log. We want something that is solid, airtight, and very hard to penetrate with fire. Of course, everything will burn if it gets that close. But what we want, so we're doing a lot of exterior stucco, a lot of hardy cement board and other cement boards on exterior. So it really is getting that Class A fire rated exterior material and thinking about that defendable space, and then not doing detailing like the kindling. We don't want little spaces or gaps where embers can enter. So we really want to create sort of a perfect airtight and then Class A fire rated exterior to keep that fire away. And you can do that with great architectural style. That does not mean you're building a bunker. I don't ever want people to think there are limitations in that, but that there are ways to be really smart in detailing that exterior to really diminish any areas where fire would be attracted.
Just to go back to, resiliency, that's preventing a home from burning. I remember being in West Sonoma in 2017 and in 2020 when there were some fires, very big fires close by, and the air was super bad around, and that got inside the home. And I imagine that with these passive homes, these like airtight barriers, it really allows people to stay in their homes and really use their home as a bunker. It doesn't have to look like a bunker, but as a safe haven when things around you are really going crazy.
These events are going to continue to happen. And to some degree, they always have. And I think there's been some very sad news coming out of the Palisades and out of Altadena around the smoke damage. There are a lot of people whose homes did not get damaged by the fires, but they can't live there, that they're totally toxic because the smoke was drawn in and the ash was drawn in, and there's just a lot of toxicity. And so I think this idea of safe shelter and having clean air inside, whether it's pollen in allergy season or keeping the smoke out during smoke season and having clear, fresh air. So everything we're doing is airtight, but that means we are thinking about keeping fresh air constantly circulating in the home. So an ERV or an HRV that is circulating, our standard is every 3 hours, the entire home is refreshed with filtered air from the outside with a MERS filter or HEPA filter on there. So without thinking, without having to turn something on, you've just got filtered fresh air year round inside your home. I was just a part of the USGBC's California conference, and we actually did a whole trade show section that was called Smoke Tight, because you're right, it's not just about sort of fire hardening or fire protection, but it's about health protection of, what happens when these natural disasters come. We want to stay at home. And if we have to flee, we want to come home to a safe, clean environment, change out those filters and, stay home. Sadly, this devastating fire event, or fires, I should say, has again raised awareness of, what does it mean to live close by when things like this happen, and how do we protect ourselves? And I do think that airtightness and not having that grit and grime and smoke coming in, there are people who are throwing out all their furniture. They're having to basically take things down to the studs, which is just as, painful and displacing as your fire being lost. I mean, your home being lost to fire. So I think we're going to hear more and more about that. And I'm very hopeful that insurers will recognize the value of building back to this standard and acknowledging that that is a huge risk reduction for everyone, and especially the insurers, so that it is a value when people build back to the standard. And we've seen other communities and utilities give benefit back to people who do that.
Is that true?
Yeah, I am really so honored and excited to share Xcel Energy in the Marshall Fire, which is the local utility around Boulder and Denver. Xcel Energy stepped up in the rebuild effort for the Marshall Fire, and gave incentive dollars to people sort of on a scale of performance. You rebuild your home to Energy Star or all the way up to Passive House. And if you get certified as Passive House, it was $37,000 per home that the utility paid.
Wow.
Let me say that again. $37,000. So this was an incredible incentive to get a lot of people aware of building better. And why was that so much? I forget what Energy Star was. I think it was like 10,000. So it was a huge difference of their value and performance from one program to another. Mm-hmm. And I just met with Xcel's project manager on a brand new program that all new building construction, if they certify, they're offering $30,000 for any new home construction. So when we think about the value to just the utilities of what it means to them to not have to keep adding to the grid and building in those systems, that conservation approach is meaningful enough to them to give huge benefit to builders and homeowners who are achieving high performance.
Let's get geeky.
What is part of your material selection process? Like, how do you said you use like dense packed cellulose. Could you kind of go into the nitty gritty of your panels and talk about like health, simplicity, all of that stuff?
This is so much fun. We dig deep. I mean, we're really wonky. And like I said, this is technology coming out of 15 years of architectural practice and into now we're in our, heading into our 7th year. We are around that resiliency of materials. So I'm going to get a little geeky for just a second on this of, we love talking about cellulose.
Yeah, we can get geeky. This is like the podcast to get.
Let's just go. It's really nice to be able to say this is carbon sequestering, right? It's recycled post-consumer, recycled newsprint. Mm-hmm. Fabulous, right? Especially if we're doing a life cycle assessment and we're really pushing on that.
Yeah,
we get you there. But cellulose is a great natural fiber. Mm-hmm. And so not only do we have the thermal performance we need and want for Passive House because we can dense pack it, but it also has great natural material performance metrics that we're looking for. So if there's moisture, and we know there's moisture in every assembly and every material, there's some level of moisture. Well, we're pairing cellulose with very high-tech air vapor control on the interior and the weather barrier, but both of those are vapor open. So right. Our design is, I hate saying breathable, but it is right. It's the ideal of the building science. So everything that we do, it's not just, oh, that's cool, let's do that. Everything is modeled for performance, and we're modeling from climate zones, 8 to 2 to make sure that the building science that we're putting into practice is the best, most robust, and will not fail. And so that's sort of fundamental. So it is the thermal bridge free and modeling and doing the Flixo and looking at the performance of the wall from the thermal side of it, but it's also the building science, the stack of materials, and how they perform. Our panels are sheathed in plywood. And people will say, oh, why aren't you using OSB? And because we need the vapor openness for it to be a healthy assembly. And so each piece of what we're putting into our assemblies is not just, this is the best buildup, but looking at the climate conditions that it's going to live in and making sure that it's a good match. We have the R30 wall, which is just an advanced frame wall. It's a 2x8 frame wall. And we just had the study done on that and got the green light to go into Austin. We had, really resisted going into hot, humid climates. You know what's amazing? Do the science, right? Check your gut. That was really gratifying. And, our certifier was like, I can't get it to break. You guys really have designed sort of the perfect wall, and it performs beautifully in this hot, humid climate. So a lot of people think about
because of the breathability.
Because of the breathability and the robustness of the material. And I think we do invest in our materials, and we're using the ProClima line of air and weather barriers. And so we're keeping it, of course, within their warranty, but even the Intello X air barrier on the interior of our walls, it's actually rated as a weather barrier because we know these panels are going to move around. And I think that's part of the assurance is we want to keep all the materials in the entire assembly as healthy, dry, safe, in transit until they get on site and then get made into a home. So we are considering that. And, we love the industry. We love innovation in the industry. So you may in time see us with a hemp wall, with a wool wall. And we're really open to that R&D and into those partnerships right this second. And for the last 6 years, we are really satisfied with cellulose and its performance and its durability. But again, we're very open to that, but it is always based on the building science and doing the modeling and making sure that where we are delivering, that it is climate appropriate and as robust a system as we can deliver. And that is our goal.
It seems like there's a crossover also between the building science and also maybe material chemical composition, right? You're not using like spray foam insulation, you're using cellulose. Even the difference between OSB and plywood, right? Plywood requires less glue than OSB. So like the simplicity is really, it's really important because if you're using less materials, or if you're using materials with less adhesives or chemicals, like that's going to play a role, especially, homes burn down and that goes back into the soil. So I think the material health is also really crucial when we think about resiliency.
I do think that some of our clients who have been victims to these fires and climate disasters have come to us specifically wanting a foam-free assembly. They know they've experienced that toxicity and they've, seen their neighborhoods go down. And when you do that, you do think about, oh my gosh, what is burning? It's the couch. It's the foam in the walls and the gas lines going in. And I think sensitivity and sort of the clarity of materials and that's not the circularity we want, but it is sort of part of this cycle of if there is a disaster that we don't want to continue to contribute. But I think more importantly, we don't want to trap ourselves and our families within these things that are off-gassing. And so it's a priority, and we're shocked that more people aren't looking into it and aware. It also helps that it's airtight, right? There's nothing flowing through our assembly if there was some, VOCs in it, which there are not. But if there's no leakage through these perfect walls, where if you're doing traditional construction and, 30% of loss through those pinpricks, there's a lot of air movement going through the assembly, and those materials really matter. So we have a lot of clients coming to us with mold sensitivities or chemical sensitivities, looking for what exactly you're pointing out is materials that are safe for us to be around, to live in, and are not contributing to sort of the toxicity of the industry, that we're working with natural materials that, we want our builders to be safe and healthy too, right?
Of course. Right.
The path forward.
What's in store for the future?
Oh my gosh, we're having so much fun. Yeah, it's, we've got great projects going up right now. We've got a project up in Maine that's going up with Randy Rand, a beautiful custom project. Our first LA project will go up shortly, probably, hopefully before November, but it might be November. And we've got another builder training in September. We'll be on the road a little bit for some trade shows. We're definitely going to be in LA for Green Build.
Great.
We will be hosting an event. So if people want to hit our website and get on our newsletter and get invited to an event there, we're supporting the design competition with the Passive House Network. We've got a competition going for passive homes for the rebuild. And I'm working with a wonderful client and teacher in the area that I raised my hand and I said, let's not just have all the judges be us professionals in the AEC industry. Let's get some of the kids who lost their homes involved. So we've got a cohort of students that are going to be judging, which I love. But our client is so incredible, and she's now creating a passive house after school program for those kids to go through a 6-week, and then they get to judge. So we'll be a part of that. We will be in Milwaukee for FIAS, and just designing and building with a lot of people. I think we're thrilled to be partnered with exceptional architects who are very curious and hungry for pathways to make our industry better. So stay tuned for lots of cool new collabs and projects coming out. And I have to tout my staff. We've got just the best people under roof here at B Public, and they're designing some gorgeous work directly with clients and some developers. It's just, we feel like we've got great energy and great solutions for people. Yeah. And then we get to watch it go up really quickly and keep going. So
Sure. That's great. That's great. Well, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you. I love your company, and I look forward to keeping in touch.
thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and more soon.